We are all losers.
The shark's right. She played you all.
You played yourselves. Welcome to Task Force X.
Let me be very honest. I would not even be playing Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League if this game was still for sale at its launch price. Releasing on the 2nd of February 2024, for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series and PC, this third-person action shooter was already into its third season, as I picked it up for roughly a fifth of its original retail price. I do think it's important to say that up front, as I can almost guarantee I would have felt differently about this game if it had cost me its original retail price, and despite what some publishers think, I really don't mean that in a positive way. I guess I'll follow that by saying I'm a fan of the DC universe, but this game wasn't all that appealing to me at the time of launch. Palworld and Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth were already taking up my free time in January, and Helldivers 2 was a strong distraction in early February. This game quietly slipped into my own personal black hole of obscurity, until Steam's latest sale. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League has a simple premise, and it's right there in the title.
Come in. Task Force X. Your new mission is to kill the Justice League.
You play as one of 4 members of Task Force X, known as the Suicide Squad. All hell has broken loose upon Metropolis, and the members of the Justice League are turned into obedient soldiers by the well-known DC Universe villain, Brainiac. This leaves Amanda Waller to enact her contingency plan, which sees Deadshot, Harley Quinn, King Shark, and Captain Boomerang released from Arkham and tasked with putting down the heroes for good. Understandably, our villains turned anti-heroes embrace the task in part, as it offers them a chance at redemption. The other part is because they have literal bombs in their heads. The story is set up quite well early on, and there's a lot of high-budget cinematography and voice acting. This is well supported by cutscenes and strong graphical presentation, which uses guest appearances and cameos from a host of DC side characters to elicit familiarity and fandom. This game certainly looks the part, if nothing else. The basic plot sees you unlock technological loopholes that allow 4 idiots with guns to take down the Justice League's best, and as such, you have to really want to buy into the narrative. As this story progresses, there are a few moments that humanize the villains, but each has been dialed up to 11, and their eccentricities are overblown for comic effect. This results in some moments landing strong and hard, like Harley's juvenile jokes.
They had the right idea. Somebody find the back entrance.
Best dirty movie I ever saw! Oh, crap!
Or if you're inclined to more serious elements, the way Wonder Woman valiantly and stubbornly tries to bring her Justice League colleagues back to their senses. The quality of these moments is inconsistent, but it's never overbearing or immersion breaking. The contrast between the characters is notable though, as Deadshot's very matter-of-fact and pragmatic. King Shark is very literal. Captain Boomerang is a display of excellent voice acting, but as his character is a prolific liar and exaggerator, he's very much a selfish individual. This comes across well for the purpose of serving some story moments, but makes him the most easily unlikable character.
Guy like him sees a guy like me coming. He starts quaking in his boots.
Harley Quinn is likely the most well-known of these characters, and she's as insane as she needs to be. I also like this presentation of Harley a lot, as it's less hypersexualized than she often is. To state the obvious, these characters are all wildcards within their own rights. And I guess that's the issue. There's not enough boring and safe characters for the crazy to stand out, so it diminishes their eccentricities as a whole. And yes, I am including the side characters that support the team, along with Amanda Waller herself, when I say that. In terms of gameplay, I called this an action shooter in my introduction, and that's fairly apt. In some of the game's official media, it's described as genre-defying, and I've not seen anything in this game that justifies that comment. Even within the opening mission, this has a paint-by-numbers, hold out for a specific time mission. This is very much a repetitive third-person shooter that's trying to avoid the word looter at all costs, while chipping off fragments of that genre's mechanics for its reward system. There are RPG elements here, and for what it's worth, they are well used. The higher the number, the better, and in most cases there's the usual rarity colours to give you a general indicator of an item's value. The game uses a levelling system, and you can equip members of your squad that you aren't playing as with gear as well. This has some passive multiplayer benefit if you use someone else's teammates, or vice versa, but it mostly just affects your bots if you aren't playing with friends. For a game that's labelled as a shooter, there is a lot of melee combat. The primary game flow seems to revolve around ducking in and out of close range combat to break enemy shields and restore your own, before stepping back to use your weapons or taking potshots from range. Each character has 2 guns and a melee weapon, as well as a gadget or power for traversal. The guns and equipment make sense, but even during the opening tutorial, the traversal gameplay feels deliberately designed to differentiate each playable character. Each has their own way of moving around and getting from place to place. As examples, Harley uses a drone and a grappling hook. King Shark can use his power and physiology to run up the side of buildings. Rather than unifying these controls so everyone's traversal behaves similarly, the game took the approach to make all of these slightly different. That's fine, of course, but it does mean that during the opening section, when you're switching between all 4 playable anti-heroes, this feels awkward. You're not really engaging with the mechanics, you're just following the directions. Combine this with the generic looking enemies and weak gunplay, you have a very confusing introduction from a gameplay perspective. Even if this does land some story elements really well, these are undercut by how you get to them, and indeed, how often you are asked to do the exact same mediocre tasks in missions. Even after the tutorial, when you can freely choose your characters, moving around feels cumbersome, and the gunplay feels light and loose. Shark's traversal is the one I found the most natural to control, and I ended up using him heavily. Conversely, Harley's swinging and grappling hook made her feel really awkward to control. I guess it's all about what you latch onto early on, and sticking with that one character and getting good with their traversal and skills is probably the best approach to have. When it comes to gunplay, there's not much exciting about the weapons, and while it makes sense that King Shark should hold a minigun without much recoil, all assault rifles feel the same, all SMGs feel the same, and all shotguns feel the same. The weapons look interesting at times, and there's enough freedom in the world once you get a few hours in, that you can look past some of the issues, particularly if you are wired in a way to chase loot or higher numbers. I usually am, but even with all the additional crazy dialed up here, from exploding cars, encounters with the heroes themselves, to an outpouring of quips and dialogue from the cast, there's something undeniably unfulfilling about these missions. Where the game gets some points back is for the way that it throws you curveballs. The entire premise of the game is very much one big, okay, time for plan B. But there are some shocks and surprises you won't see coming in the narrative. The gameplay undercutting them is transactional at best, and I do think giving us a short, sharp and strong narrative burst, which ends up being around 12 hours, was better than trying to drag this out over 20 or more. One area I didn't expect to be praising this game is in progression. For all I can take shots at a AAA studio making a live service looter game, this never feels like you're drowning in loot, or as though you are only progressing for that purpose. Each member of Task Force X has their own talent tree too, and there are different playstyles that, at a high level overview, tune each of the characters towards more specific archetypes, like a melee fighter or a longer range sniper. This system unlocks actions that allow the building up of combos, as well as special abilities, and if your combo reaches a specific point, you gain certain bonuses. This is likely designed to have the same effect as a snowball rolling downhill, but the early game suffers from a lack of enemy numbers to keep these going. This gets better for the late game and into some of the end game activities. These often involve raising your mastery level by dropping into other Earths and fighting Brainiac's forces there. You can choose your mastery level, which is essentially your difficulty modifier, and higher levels provide better loot. This is a pretty tried and true system, even if the missions do make it feel stale and repetitive. One element I do want to point out for praise though is the infamous weapons and their special effects. There's some elements of these that have a level of crazy that the Borderlands team would appreciate. As I joined this game late, I had 3 battle passes and seasons to work through, which presented the endgame as an imposing grind. If you've got a friend or two willing to get this with you, I can see this being a progression staircase you can climb together, throwing an hour or two a week at this over a period of months. This is low brain power in that bigger number is often better, looter kind of way, and it really works for those mindless fun moments where you just want to see a few explosions. The game has daily quests and a host of live service features too, that feel awkwardly smushed into this package, and they occasionally divert away from the game's true standout moments, like the narrative. But at least I will say the game isn't pushy and aggressive at putting its cash shop in your face. What really props up this narrative, and that is indeed the best part of this game, is the voice cast, which is an impressive array of industry veterans. There's people like Jason Isaacs, Tara Strong, Scott Porter, Nolan North, and Deborah Wilson, who all play prominent roles. Personally, I think Daniel Lepane stole the show with his presentation of Captain Boomerang, but that's a combination of both the vocal work and the writing for his character that really brings out his crazy. This game's technical performance is nothing special, with some little jumps and drops and frame rate on the occasion, but it's generally solid. I'm aware I can't read too much into this as I joined much later in its life cycle, and my first impression could be tainted by months of patching previously. I really went into this game hoping that DC had avoided the mistakes Marvel made, with its own live service looter action game, Marvel Avengers. This game has a better technical showing than that game, and the boss fights are shorter and less button-mashy showpieces, even if keeping track of Superman during his boss fight was a bit of a nightmare. The main reason I can recommend this game is the narrative components, particularly writing and cinematography, which are strong pluses. While it's in no way enough to absolve the game of gameplay issues, which feel dragged down by simple and repetitive objectives, it might be enough to justify looking past the live service elements, fueled by daily quests and grindy battle passes. Surprisingly, I came out of this game with more positive responses than I expected, and even taking into account that I've had an easier time than I might have at launch, if you're looking around digital storefronts and come across this game in a sale, I can confidently say that this isn't the immediate head-shaking rejection it might once have been. There's a sprinkling of good here that makes it worth playing at least once, even if I don't think this will live long in the memory of many.